All right, guys, it's Tark with Cyclone FPV again, and now we are on a series, part number 4, right? So we've done the frame, we've done the ESC, we've done the motor prep. Now we're going to bring the ESC and motors together, finalize what we're doing on the ESC, touch up a few things, add a capacitor, make sure the motors are all on and zip tied properly, and then we'll go to part 5. Okay, so part 4, here we go with our picture-in-picture. This is where we're at. We've got our 4 motors ready to go. We've got our ESC ready. We'll turn this away from us real quick. There's a couple things we need to do on the ESC. You have 2 capacitors that were given to you. You have this massive one here. Physically, it's a huge capacitor. And then you have the smaller one that came with the flight controller. I think for the ease of doing this, we're just going to use the big one for the time being. And I'm going to explain to you how this works because we need to add this to the setup before we continue. Because I want to attach it here. Although we could always attach it to the flight controller. But I'm just going to go ahead and do this first. Knowing that we're going to have to bring these wires over is the only tricky part. I've got to make sure that we can still do what we need to do with that. And that really shouldn't be a problem at all. Let me just verify here. Yeah, we should be just fine. Okay, so on your capacitor, right, there's something very important to note about this real quick. And I want to make sure y'all pay attention to this. There's 2 sides of this capacitor. You have obviously a positive and negative. And usually, rule of thumb is that the positive is going to be the longer wire. When you buy a capacitor, no matter which one you get, if they don't have any of the shielding on them like this one where it's red and black, but you'll notice here that the red is still longer. And again, here's the longer, and that's the positive. The other way you could tell is because the negative has these marks on it, right? So if you look on the side of the positive, there's nothing. It's just regular. On the negative, it has these lines. And if you look at this capacitor as well, it's got these same lines designating negative. Do not reverse these. If you do, you're going to have it's like a firecracker. This thing will explode and pop out the back most likely. And it's kind of scary, and if you have your hand in the way, you can get hurt, or anything else in the way for that matter. So please, by all means, just make sure you pay attention to this, and you have to be pretty precise with this one, so take your time and do it right, all right? So where you place this is up to you. I'm going to say that because of the way this frame is made, I'm just going to kind of place it right here. So main thing is I want to make sure that my wires are cut so that they can fit that area and not touch anything. So if you look here, I'm just going to place it on the table, and I'll kind of zoom in here so I can show you. So you can see my wires right here, right? So I'm going to place it in kind of this little space right here. Just going to kind of put it just like that, somewhere in that area. Because what we'll do is we'll put some heat shrink on this and some double-sided tape to keep it down. But anyways, so let's just say we're going to put it right there, okay? So you can see that the wires are too long. I mean, you can see, look, right here, you can see the power wire the positive runs to here, the ground runs to here. What I will tell you to do is I'll tell you to just take your wire cutters and just go to the somewhere near the soldered piece there. So now my wires stop right here. Perfect, okay? What I want to do next is I'm going to go ahead and take my flux paste right here. I'm just going to kind of dip this in, both sides of this in, and I don't want this to get too hot. So please, when you're going to try to solder this up a little bit, make sure you don't let it get too hot. But just lay it on the table there and just kind of right around that area, just kind of run some, try to tin it just a little bit if you can. And if it starts rolling all over the place like mine's doing, just kind of put something to hold in its place there. And you just want to try to tin a little bit, okay? You're not going to get much on here because there's not much for it to grab to. But even just a slightest bit like that will be okay. All right, now let me zoom out and show you what we're working with, okay? So here we go. Let's bring our frame back right there. And let's go ahead and lay this now. And remember, lay it to where positive's on the right side there. It's on the correct side, that is. And ground is on the correct side, okay? And again, you can see my markings here, okay? So once we've got it right about here, right, what I'll tell you is take one side, whichever side you choose, and try to just kind of get it to tack it down just to hold it in place, okay? So that's going to hold the positive in place. Now I'm going to take my tweezers, and I'm just going to kind of bring the ground in a little bit there, just kind of like that. Try, because this wire can be bent a little bit, so don't worry about it. And I'm going to take my solder on here, and I'm actually just going to try to put some more on there and get it to hold, okay? And I want to make sure they get a strong enough fit on here. And what you want to do is you can hold it and you can just kind of spread it on the sides, right, like this. Just make sure that you get a good hold on it because you do not want this coming off, all right? Okay, so once that's done, you can go back over to the positive side because we just tacked it down, right? Let's put a little bit more solder on there and just try to see if we can also tack this one down nicely and kind of paint this solder, I guess, over the line so we get a nice hold, okay? Just like that. All right, then let it cool. Make sure it looks decent here. It does. I'm just going to add, I feel like I didn't get enough on my ground, so let me just make sure that I've got enough. There we go. Okay, so now we've got it set. There's our capacitor. It looks good. it's solid on here. You can see that it's on there very well. Okay, now we can put that in place, and we could still bring our wires around to do the rest of our work. Okay, let me just make sure. I've got some loose strands here that I need to take care of, I can tell. And that stems from the fact that the solder, when I was doing this, so make sure to check the bottom. If you can look at mine, I'm going to show you. This is a mistake that was made on my part. You want to make sure you don't make these mistakes. So look, I don't know if I can show you this on the camera, but you can see some strands. I think you can. Look right here. I mean, inspect your work, right? And you can see some strands here. Like there's a strand right here. I don't want these strands loose. But what's happened is when I was tinning my wire, I didn't get all the way around. So I'm going to go back now and just touch up my wire. And you need to do the same. And that's why we have our hot glue. So I would definitely tell you, get ready to use some hot glue. I use it on all my builds, and it helps just kind of protect everything else that I've done. So let me just go through here, and on the bottom, I'm just going to try to get my loose wire and make sure that my solder on the bottom is just as strong. I could just kind of see where there's some places that didn't get solder. And so if you see that by turning it over, don't just think that because you did one side, you're done. Try to see if you can get that cleaned up. A lot of times here, you can sit here and just let me see how I can get this to show you. A lot of times you can just kind of get your solder here and just kind of spread it out. Like I said, it's like painting it. You just don't want to get it too hot. You know, you don't want to heat everything up. There you go. So now I've got everything looking good. My wires look good, so I have no problem there. And like I said, we will put hot glue on this. Right now I just turned the hot glue gun on, but I'll show you how that's going to apply. And I will put hot glue on every piece here. There's a couple of reasons why for that, right? So let me explain to you real quickly. So here's the deal with hot glue, right? So hot glue is going to go ahead and it's going to kind of form around your soldering points, okay? So if you do have any weak wires or any strands that are kind of all over the place, once you put the hot glue down, it's going to melt around those and hold them in place. The other thing about hot glue that's really cool is when you put it on there, if you put it properly, don't go like all crazy with it, but if you put it properly, you kind of make this seal or this layer there where debris and water and stuff, it kind of protects it from that. Now it's not 100%, but it's much better. So I use hot glue on all my builds. I don't use a ton of it, but I definitely go over all my solder points. So I will tell you to plan on doing that. I mean, you don't have to, but it is definitely something I would recommend. All right, now we got our capacitor here. Now we're done with the back of this. The only thing left to do on this part is going to be to do the wiring to get it to the flight controller. So now it's time to do the motors, right? So let's go ahead and start with motor, and don't forget we're going to be doing motors 1, 2, 3, and 4. And remember, motors 1 and 4 spin clockwise, and those are going to have the black tops right here, and they are going to have the arrows that, let me see if this has the arrows on it. Some of them won't have the arrows, and some of them will. But in either case, the motors, there's two kinds of motors that they make. Now they have motors that they go both directions, meaning you've got some that are designated as clockwise and counterclockwise. That's one style of motor. The other motor is all one direction because they don't want you to have to pick and choose, and therefore you use a different top for it, okay? So in this case, to know if you've got the right direction, spin your motor. So spin this one clockwise, right? Turn it with one hand and hold the fastener up here. If you spin it and it loosens, you're going the wrong direction, right? So if you spin it counterclockwise, I can already tell you this black fastener is going to pop off, right? But if I spin it clockwise, right, just like that, it's tightening right now, okay? The opposite is for the silver one. The silver one, if I spin it clockwise, it loosens, and if I spin it counterclockwise, it tightens. So in that case, we are knowing that which direction these should go. Plus these are marked right here, okay? So let's go ahead and make sure that we've got the same thing, and we do. All right, so we're going to start with the counterclockwise, the silver motor, the silver top. We're going to mount those first. Now, like I said before, I'm going to take some 6mm hex screws, but you can use the ones that Coach Stafford gave you, which are going to be these silver Phillips, as long as you make sure you use your washer. So they all have a washer on them, right? So make sure you do that. That way it'll keep the screw from hitting the motor windings, okay? So here we go. I'm just going to put 2 screws in, like I was saying earlier. And then we're going to go ahead and zip tie and make sure we get everything perfectly done, okay? So let's see, we want to put this to where the heat shrink is running straight down the center of the, and don't tighten the screws 100% here, just enough to hold it in place, because you still have to put this next screw in, and if you tighten it and you're not on, you won't be able to get this one in. All right, once this is in, you can kind of clamp it down a little bit. All right, so that's our lineup right now, right? Now what we want to do is we want to zip tie this. If you're going to zip tie it, this is the good time to do it. Let me find some zip ties that I'm going to use. I will use, I think I'll just stick with a black zip tie, I guess, for now. No, well, yeah, I'll just use black. Let me open this pack of black zip ties. I don't have any more open, so give me 1 second to get this ready. Okay. Okay, so, and when you zip tie, look, this is something I'm real picky about. You don't have to be, but I'm going to tell you right now that to me, it makes a difference, right? It's part of the looks and the part of the cosmetics of the drone. So, move all your stuff out of the way. So, here's the deal. I put all my zip ties this way, right? I take the zip tie, and I come in from the outside, and I come into the center, and I wrap it around like that. And the reason I do that is because it's easier to clamp this down and get this ugly fastener piece out of the way, so it's not necessarily in view. As far as where you're going to put it, I would try to make them all the same. For the first one, try to go kind of right on the, maybe like 5 millimeters in or so from where these two were together, and just clamp it down like that and cut that off, okay? And keep them uniform if you can. We are going to have little foam standoffs for landing pads, and so we know that those are going to go somewhere in this area. So for the next zip tie, just go towards the end of this heat shrink, okay? Just like this, put the next one in place, and we can put that right, like, you can come 5 millimeters in if you want, I guess. That'll leave you enough space, but something like that. Let's say, clamp that down and cut it. And that's how we're going to keep things uniform, all right? Cut those pieces off and throw them out. Now, let's go ahead and I want to solder the first one on here so I can show you what we're doing. So let's go ahead and take this, lift it up, put the ESC on. Okay, now what we had said on this one, there's 2 ways to do this. I'm coming from the inside, I'm just going to turn it and solder. Make sure you keep your wires in line. That means, hold on, just dropped one of my screwdrivers. Okay, so that means, and pay attention to this because this is going to make or break some of the extra programming you may need to do. So when I turn this, my inside wire here, right? So I've got 1, 2, and 3. 1 is the outside closest to the front, 2 is the middle, 3 is the inside closest to me, closest to the center. That is going to be the first one. So if you wrap these around, you want to keep them in line straight. So if you were to take this wire, this set of wires, and you just held them perfectly straight and you turn them, right? You're going to end up 1, 2, and 3. So we want to take this one here, and we're going to go to the first position closest, okay? So I'll show you, and I'll show you. Hopefully that makes sense. Take this one. This is our inside wire, okay? And just place it over here and solder it right on. It doesn't take much force. There you go. Then you're done, okay? Take wire number 2, which is your middle wire. Place that over the middle port. And you're done. All right? And take, now I don't like that one. My soldering didn't come out good because I don't think I have enough solder on here. I want it to look a little bit better and have a little bit more, be a little bit more secure. So let me just kind of add a little bit more there, and then I'm going to reposition this. I'd like it to be as close to the middle of the pad as possible and not on the end like that. And I need to clean my soldering iron. I can tell right off the bat. All right, so let's do that just like that, okay? Let me clean this, because your soldering iron should always have a nice silver tip to it. If it's starting to get dark, it means that it's oxidizing. You need to clean it up. All right, so we're going to do the third one. Here's the third one, and we're just going to get that one to kind of reach right here. Let me get that back on there properly. Okay, and there we go. All right, so there's our wires there. They look clean. Everything looks good. And for the most part, we can lay these down, and that should clear just fine. So we've got our 3 motor wires turned inward. And what that's going to do is when you go and put your flight controller on, these are going to kind of be hidden. It's going to be kind of neat to look at, okay? So those look good. I would like to, this is what happens when I come in and I'm not the one who originally soldered the board. I have to just work with whatever solder was on there to begin with, but it looks good. I think that's going to be fine. All right, so that's motor 2. Let's do motor 3 since we're doing the same thing. So that's going to be the other silver top, okay? So let's go ahead and put that, and we're going to put 2 screws in again. Here's one. Let's get the second one in. And again, don't tighten these down until you get them both in. And then you still don't want to, like, you don't have to go crazy on tightening them, but you can at least kind of put them firmly so the motor is in place and isn't moving too much. Main thing is try to get that center piece. You know, you want this to be in the center right here. This little, this is the clip that holds the top of the motor, the bell, onto the rest of it. So just make sure that's in the center. There you go. All right, once you get that, let's go ahead and get the zip tying again. We want to keep the same pattern, the same format we've done. So do everything exactly the same, and you'll end up with a pretty uniform quad, okay? So again, we're going to come about 5 millimeters in. Let's come about right there, tighten that down, and then we're going to go to the other side, about 5 millimeters from the end, here. Make sure it's straight, and you can cap it right about, like, let's say right here, something like that. All right, once those are in place, go ahead and cut those off and throw them out. There we go. Okay, and again, we're going to take the wires, bring them in, turn them around, and get them soldered. Okay, so we're going to start with the inside wire, and then we'll go to the outside wire last, right here. So inside wire, wire number 1. Let's go ahead and get that going. I'm going to add a little bit more solder to these pads just because I want them to kind of solder a little bit easier. So let me go ahead and just kind of put a little bit more solder right here. 1, 2, and let's put a little 3. And then I'm going to, as I do the motor wires, probably add a little bit of solder to those as well. I'm going to put the solder on, but I'm going to put it, I don't want it necessarily over the ESC because I don't want solder dropping on the board as it gets hot. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so we're going to put to motor wire 1 right here. There we go. That went on well. Okay, now we want the middle wire. This is this one. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit of extra solder on here just so that it kind of goes on easier. There you go. This will be the middle. I don't want to bridge this, but I can see right here it looks like it's a little run over, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to try to clean that up here. Let me take this wire off. I got to see what happened here. So, all right, let me clean this real quick because this is not the way I would want this to be. So I'm just going to kind of put my soldering iron in between, scrape off the solder that's there, and now let's try it again. This is my middle wire again. And I've lowered the heat considerably from what I normally solder at because I'm coming in and working on somebody else's board. So there's going to be a few little things that I have to get used to myself on this. All right, so once that's done, we're going to go for the third wire, which is right here. And let's go ahead and get that down, and there you go. So now we've got 2 of the motors down, and they look good. Everything looks clean, okay? And now what we can do is we're going to do the next 2 motors. So we're going to do, let's see, this is the front of the quad here where the camera is. So we're going to do motor 4 next. So go ahead and get, I forgot I had the screws here already, my bad. Let me go ahead and mount this on here. Here we go. Okay, so now this is motor 4. And we're going to basically be doing the same thing. Now, since I solder this direction, I have to turn this so that I can get a comfortable spot when I'm soldering. Again, we're going to be going, this is our wire, it's going to be going to the front here, and then we're going to work our way backwards, okay? So let me go ahead and just add a little bit more solder to these pads. 1, 2, and 3. All right, now, this is the closest one. Turn and put this one right here. Okay, let's take our middle one. I'm going to turn and put that one in the middle. Okay, and we'll take our farthest one, turn and put that right here. There we go. All right, then we have our last motor. This will be motor 1. Again, mount it with 2 screws, and here we go. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing again. and then we'll be done with the motors. Okay, so again, oh, I didn't zip tie these. I will zip tie. I'm sorry. I kind of got ahead of myself here because I don't want to take too long in the video, so I apologize. But I will zip tie those in just a second. Let me make sure we got enough solder here. I think we do. All right, so we're going to go here again on the inside. Okay, there's one. Let's go with the middle wire next. There's two, and then we're going to go with the farthest wire, which is 3. All right, now, I didn't zip tie these like I said to do at the beginning, so I'm going to go ahead and knock that out now. So with these, we're going to come in from the outside in, just like we did the last ones, right? I'm going to turn this so I can get a better grip on this, but again, we're going to be 5 millimeters off from where the two join, from where ours heat shrink, and so you can eyeball 5 millimeters, but just kind of strap it right there. And then we're going to go 5 millimeters away from the edge of this one, towards the inside here. So let's do that. Something similar like, let me move this up a little bit. There you go, something like that. Okay, we'll cut these pieces off. Okay, throw those out, and then we'll do the last motor on the other side. It should look pretty clean. Everything should start looking uniform, right? You want to kind of eyeball it, but you want to make sure that you get used to doing that, okay? So let's do this one. Let me get this flight controller out of the way. There we go. Now I'm just going to turn it around to me here. Make sure I'm in the center. 5 millimeters off. Something like that right there, I guess. Look good. And then again, we're going to do this one here. And there we go. Okay. All right. All right, guys. So it just went a little over 20 minutes. I was trying to keep these all around 20-minute mark. The next thing we're going to be working on are these wires here from the ESC to the flight controller. We are pretty much done with our ESC at this point. So if you look, everything looks pretty uniform now. I'm very happy with the way this is turning out. So let me kind of show you. Okay, so this is your quad right now. Looks good, should look good. You should have everything set up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come back and do the next part, which is going to be on setting up the flight controller and getting all these wires set, okay? So if you have any questions, as always, please head over to the website and let me know. You could post comments on the YouTube. I was thinking about turning the comments off, but if you do, I can't tell you I'm going to see those immediately. Those are some of the last things I get to look at when I have emails and everything coming in. But use our email section there if you can as well. Other than that, guys, I hope you're doing well with this. I'm very proud of y'all and how far you've come so far. So let's see if we can finish this in just a little bit. See you. Bye.